be covering Unit 3, Social Studies, Chapter 3, Civics and Government. You can follow along using the Kaplan GED Test Prep Plus 2020 book. Remember that you can play, pause, or rewind at any time. So why don't we go ahead and get started with Lesson 1.
As a reminder, we will be utilizing the Kaplan GED Test Prep Plus 2020 book for this and all videos offered through the GED ON platform. You can find links below to purchase the book at your local store or online. Remember to register your book at captest.com/more-online for additional assistance. During this video, we will be covering Chapter 3, Civics and Government, Lessons 1 through 5. Lesson 1 starts on page 452. Lesson 1. Historic Basis for U.S. System. This lesson focuses on the historical timeline for the basis of U.S. system. In order to learn how U.S. system came to be, we will travel to ancient Greece during the 500 BCE, where democracy had its beginnings. Democracy can first be seen in Greece. They adopted a form of democracy called direct democracy, where the people voted to pass laws or rules. This sounds like a solid form of government, right? Well, let's dive into it to learn more about it. The citizens formed a council, but only certain citizens were allowed, such as a landowner males over the age of 20. So pretty much this excluded half of Greece's population as they had no input into the laws that were being passed. They excluded women, slaves, and non-landowners. So it looks like this direct democracy had its fault. Now, let's travel to England and learn how their form of government influenced the type of government that the U.S. adopted. As you know, England is under monarchy rule, which means that one person, to be specific, a king or queen, rules them. For example, Queen Elizabeth II is a queen of the United Kingdom. The people of England were losing faith in their government because they thought their monarch rulers did not receive any oversight in the laws they passed. Then, in 1215, a document called the Magna Carta was signed, which limited the king's or queen's rule and reviewed all decisions they made. The Magna Carta also prevented the king and their queen to have absolute power. Along with the Magna Carta, a very important document, the habeas corpus, was also signed. The habeas corpus pretty much states that it is illegal for government to detain or imprison individuals without a fair trial. As a result of the signing of the Magna Carta, additional government overview came into fruition. The group of the king's reviewers developed into a parliament of lawmakers who were appointed by the citizens. So as the parliament's power grew, England changed into a parliamentary democracy. In this form of government, the citizens elected representatives to make necessary laws and decisions for their country. These representatives' job is to look out for the best interests of its constituents. Also, under parliamentary democracy, the party that held the majority of seats in parliament gets to decide who will become their president. Now that we have uncovered some historical basis for democracy, let's learn about other types of government. Here we have democracy, which is rule of the people, monarchy, rule of one person, aristocracy, rule of an elite class, theocracy, rule of the church, anarchy, rule of the mob, and authoritarian rule, which essentially means a dictatorship, military rule, or fascism. As a developing country, the United States wanted to form a government that will provide its citizens with a voice in government and the sense of involvement in its laws. So along comes the Age of Enlightenment. During this time, Democracy was very popular in European countries and it was spreading like wildfire. They wanted to promote a government that was essentially for the people and by the people, and wanted to emphasize the rights of individuals, which led to the adoption of the Bill of Rights. With the influence of Adam Smith, John Locke, and Voltaire, a government system was adopted by the United States. Therefore, the United States is known as a representative democracy. Citizens vote to elect representatives who make and execute laws. Let's move on to practice 1 found on page 453. At this time, please pause the video and based on the passage read on page 452, answer questions 1 and 3 found on page 453. When you are ready to start, click play. Welcome back. Let's go ahead and answer question 1. Match each choice in the box corresponding to the form of government that best matches the description. On the first half, we see the different types of forms of government: direct democracy, monarchy, representative democracy, and aristocracy. In the other half, we have different scenarios that we are to match with the first half of our page here. So let's go ahead and just get a refresher for what the types of governments are. The first one is direct democracy. So remember that in direct democracy, the Athenian Council enacted laws by votes of its citizens. In monarchy, it's the rule of one person, so it will be a king or a queen ruling that country. Representative democracy. In this form of government, the people choose representatives to pass laws for them. And then the last one, aristocracy. It's the rule of an elite class, so they are ruled by lords and barons. So let's look at our different scenarios. In country A, laws are made and administered by lords who inherit their lands and titles. So this sounds by very closely to aristocracy, which is the rule of an elite class. In country B, laws are made by a sovereign king and are subject to no review. So a great tip for you to always know what this type of form of government is, just remember that king and queen mostly go with monarchy. In country C, laws are made by Congress, an elected group of representatives. So that sounds to me like it's a representative democracy where the people choose their representatives to pass laws for them. And in country D, laws are made by the vote of all citizens, which is direct democracy. Now let's focus on question 3. In the United States, laws are enacted by Congress, a group of representatives elected by the people. Which of the following was most likely the chief historical model for the U.S. Congress? A. Athenian Council of Citizens. B. Magna Carta. C. Parliament of England. D. Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen adopted in France in 1789. So let's break it down. A. Athenian Council of Citizens. Remember that the Athenian Council enacted laws directly without the oversight of Congress or representatives. So this is not a valid answer. B. Magna Carta. The Magna Carta was a document that reviewed the decisions of the monarch. So once again, this is not a valid answer. C. Parliament of England. The Parliament of England were a group of people that are elected by the people to represent them in making of the laws or the enactment of laws. So this sounds kind of familiar as how Congress is run. In D, Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen adopted in France in 1789, there was no reference in the passage to what the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the citizen of 1789, consisted of. So therefore, the most viable answer is C, Parliament of England. At this time, pause the video, complete practice questions 2 and 4 through 5, and click play when you are ready to continue. Welcome back to Lesson 2, Constitutional Government. In the past lesson, we learned how the United States was influenced by other countries in adopting a form of government. The founders of the U.S. wanted to provide their people with a sense of belonging, and by doing so, they created a republic nation. A republic nation focuses on their citizens by allowing them to choose their representatives. The United States needed to create a set of goals for the new nation to align with the republic beliefs. In order to do so, they created the Constitution, a document establishing America's national government and fundamental laws while guaranteeing the basic rights for its citizens. The Constitution Introduction, or preamble, provides an overview of the goals that it wants to accomplish for the new nation. Let's read this together. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Now, let's move on to learn more about the 7 articles in the Bill of Rights within the Constitution. The Constitution has 7 articles. Article 1, Legislative Branch, which gives power to Congress. Article 2, Executive Branch, gives power to the President of the United States. Article 3, Judicial Branch, gives power to the judicial system, such as the Supreme Court. Article 4, Relations between States, explains the relationship of states to one another and the national government. Each state gives citizens of other states the same rights. Article 5, Amending the Constitution. This means that the Constitution can be changed in the future. However, that change can be proposed by Congress only if it is supported by 2/3 majority in both the House and the Senate. And this is in order to ensure national support. Article 6, Constitution is supreme, which pretty much means that all government officials must uphold the Constitution as the supreme law of the law, which means that no other laws can contradict any part of the Constitution. Article 7, Ratifying the Constitution. And this is the necessary approval of the Constitution or any change that needs to be made. Another part of the Constitution is the Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 amendments. The 10 amendments were ratified into the Constitution in 1971. These are just some examples of the first 10 amendments. The First Amendment guarantees freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and freedom of the press. The Sixth and Seventh Amendment guarantee citizens' right to trial by jury. The remainder 8 amendments, if you would like to learn more about them, you can check out a book at your local library to learn more about the Bill of Rights. Some other important amendments within the Constitution includes the 13th Amendment, which outlawed slavery. The 15th Amendment, rights of citizens shall not be denied or abridged on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote. 24th Amendment banned poll taxes, which some states were using to prevent African Americans from voting. 26th Amendment lowered the voting age to 18 years old. As I mentioned before, these are just some of the amendments within the Constitution. If you want to read more, you can definitely check out a book at your local library. Now, let's move on to practice 2, found on page 457. At this time, please pause the video and based on the passage read on page 454, answer questions 1 and 2 found on page 455. When you are ready to start, click play. Let's answer question 1. Based on the information on page 444, which of the following is the main characteristic of a republic? Our options are A, voting rights extended to few adult citizens, B, elected representatives exercising government power on behalf of citizens, C, people governing themselves by voting directly on all issues, D, power concentrated among a small group. In order to answer this question, we must remember that the United States is a republic nation. What does this mean? Well, it pretty much means that we as citizens elect the people that we want to represent us in the government. So now that we had a refresher about what a republic is, let's look again at our possible answers. So A, voting rights extended to few adult citizens. Based on what we know, this is not a republic characteristic. B, elected representatives exercising government power on behalf of citizens. This sounds promising. Let's keep it up here. C, people governing themselves by voting directly on all issues. This sounds like a characteristic of direct democracy, so this answer can go. D, power concentrated among a small group. Again, this does not sound like a republic characteristic. We are left with option B, which is the correct answer. Elected representatives exercising government power on behalf of citizens. Let's move on to question 2. The Constitution is a relatively brief document containing only about 7,000 words. It establishes the structure and powers of the U.S. government, but does not give many specifics. What assumptions were the drafters of the Constitution working under as they kept the document general and brief? Okay, so we know that the Constitution was created to unite the states under one government and establish a nation where people could live peacefully and not have their rights infringed. But most importantly, to be free. We learned early on in Chapter 1, to be specific, is that the U.S. has gone through many changes and it continues to evolve. For example, during its inception, voting rights was not a privilege that all citizens had. Then in 1920, the Constitution was amended to give women the right to vote. In a nutshell, the Constitution is a document that can be changed based on the needs of the country. Remember this when answering the question. So now, let's look at our options. So based on what we already know, let's answer what we think is the best possible answer. A, there was not enough time to draft a long, detailed document before the states had to ratify it. That doesn't sound right to me, does it? B, most of the power of the federal government would be reserved to the president, who could govern as he saw fit. Remember that according to the Constitution, everybody has the equal amount of power, so that way not one branch has more power than the other. C, the details of government would be worked out in the future as the need arose within the framework of the Constitution. So that seems about right, being that we saw some amendments change throughout time, the abolishment of slavery, and giving women the right to vote. And then D, written constitutions were an untested basis for democratic government, so it was better to keep such a document brief, which is absolutely not true. So let's go ahead and see are in checkout, which is our answer. So if you chose C, the details of government would be worked out in the future as the need arose within the framework of the Constitution. You are correct. At this time, pause the video, complete practice questions 3 through 5, and click play when you are ready to continue. Welcome back. We are now moving on to Lesson 3, Levels and Branches of Government. The U.S. government has different layers that help oversee the country in order to ensure that the rights of people are not infringed upon and the states are protected. The U.S. Constitution separates these layers into three parts: national or federal, state, and local. At the national or federal level, any decisions that are made affect the entire nation, meaning that any decisions made at the federal level affects all 50 states of the United States. In the state level, decisions affect all the people residing within the state. For example, any laws that are passed within the state of Arizona will only affect those residents who live in Arizona. The local level, the decisions affect those who live within a district, county, or cities. A basic principle in the U.S. Constitution is federalism, where power is shared between national and state levels of government. Now, let's focus on the three branches of government. The three branches in the federal level are as follows: legislative, executive, and judicial. We will be focusing on each of these branches in the next slides. Let's start with the executive branch. The executive branch consists of the president, its advisors, the cabinet, and State Department. The main role of the executive branch is to enforce the nation's laws and provide leadership for the country. When elected by its constituents, or the people, the President of the United States serves for one term, or 4 years. However, the President can be re-elected for another term, so he can serve for a total of 8 years. The legislative branch makes Congress, which consists of the Senate and House of Representatives. Congress's role is to create laws for the nation to follow. Members of the Senate and House of Representatives are also elected by the people, just like the President. The Senate is made up of 100 members, which means that each state can elect 2 members into the Senate, and they serve for 6 years, which is one term. The number of representatives varies depending on the state's population, and they serve for 2 years, which is also a term. For example, Arizona currently has 9 members in the House of Representatives. In comparison to the president, that can only serve for 2 terms, the Senate and House of Representatives can be re-elected for any number of terms. Let's move on to the judicial system. Yet the judicial branch consists of the federal court system. The role of the judicial system is to interpret laws. The judicial system also includes the Supreme Court, who decides disputes related to laws in the U.S. Constitution. There are currently 9 judges in the Supreme Court. So the federal judges of the judicial systems, they are not elected by the people. They are appointed by the current sitting president. I mentioned current sitting president because the judges in the Supreme Court, they serve for life. So they can see many presidents come and go. Federal judges are not elected by the people because we want them to be impartial with the rulings that they make. We do not want to worry about the judges making a decision only to please the nation or to be reelected, but rather to do what is right and just. So we know that the U.S. Constitution separated the three branches of government in Articles 1 through 3. So why would they do that? Well, remember that the founders did not want to give one branch more power than the other, or they didn't want to give federal more power than states, which is why they separated these branches to give everyone an equal amount of power. Each branch also has the power to act in ways that it affects the other branches. If you look at the diagram, the branches keep tabs on each other to make sure that they are acting accordingly and fairly. For example, Congress creates a law, and then the president has the ability to sign it into a law or to veto it. Let's say in this case, the president vetoes it, which means that it stops right there. It does not become into effect. The Congress then has the ability to pass that law without intervention of the president, but only if 2/3 of the majority agree with it. If the law passes, the Supreme Court has the authority to review the law and either declare it unconstitutional or be okay with it. If they declare it unconstitutional, then once again, it goes back to Congress. And that is the easiest way to explain checks and balances. We will now move on to practice 3, page 457. At this time, please pause the video and based on the passage read, answer questions 3 and 5 found on page 457. When you are ready to start, click play. Okay, let's start with question 3. Why do lifetime appointments help ensure the federal judges rule impartially on legal issues? Let's look at our options. A. Federal judges need not worry about pleasing their constituents in order to be reelected. B. Only people who demonstrate loyalty to the ruling political party are appointed. And C. Lifetime appointments mean that federal judges acquire a great deal of experience. D. A federal judge must be impartial or he or she will not be reelected. If you chose A, federal judges need not worry about pleasing their constituents in order to be reelected, you are correct. A federal judge can preside without worrying about making unpopular decisions. This leaves them freer to be impartial judges of the law. Let's move on to question 5. Which of the following people is most likely depicted in the cartoon? Let's look at our options. A, the president. B, a member of Congress. C, the head of a government department. D, a federal judge. Okay, let's examine the cartoon. There is a man speaking while standing up, so that means that he has the floor to speak and he is surrounded by his peers. Let's also read the quote. Let's never forget that the Constitution provides for 3 equally important branches of government, the legislative and the other 2. In this case, that person means the legislative, which is Congress. The other 2 refers to executive and judicial. Obviously, in this cartoon, he didn't want to mention the other 2 branches, which kind of makes me assume that this person is a member of Congress. So if you chose B, you are correct. At this time, pause the video, complete practice questions 1, 2, and 4, and click play when you are ready to continue. Welcome back to Lesson 4, the electoral system. In the United States, there are two political parties that dominate the rest, Democrats and Republicans. Each party has a different view about the roles of government in the nation. There are multiple voters in the United States that do not either agree with Democrats or Republicans, and they consider themselves independent. They prefer to support a third party. In past elections, third-party candidates like Ralph Nader and Ross Perot have garnered enough support that they influence the outcome in elections. There are two types of elections, the primary and the general election. Let's start with the primaries. Each party has candidates from their own party that compete against each other to earn the party's nomination. In this case, we have candidate A and candidate B from each of the dominating political parties, Democrats and Republicans. Each candidate campaigns to the people as to why they should be elected. The primary elections occur, and whoever receives the highest number of votes receives the party's nomination from the respective conventions, either Democratic National Committee or the Republican National Committee. For the purpose of this example, let's say candidate B won the nomination from the DNC and candidate A won the nomination from the RNC. Let's move on to the general election. So once the party have chosen their presidential candidates, they proceed to the general election. As I mentioned earlier, the dominating parties are Democrat and Republican, but there are also nominees from the third party. During the election seasons, the parties and candidates promote their views or platform. Such issues that they address are tax reform, Social Security, education spending, immigration, and so on. In the months leading to the general election, the presidential nominees campaign in several states to attract money to fund their campaign and attract votes. Due to the expenses in campaigning, the political parties rely heavily on fundraising that go through the Political Action Committee, or PAC. These committees represent businesses and labor or ideological interests. As a result of the high cost in campaigning, laws were put in place to restrict the amount donated to committees to prevent any illegal activity. Some of the expenses that nominees can see are coming from TV ads, radio ads, traveling, events, and personal appearances. Political parties rely on opinion polls to get a sense of their voters and the issues that they are concerned about. Using the data from these polls, they are able to appeal to a certain population. Nominees focus on large groups of people who feel strongly about certain issues in order to swing the election on their favor. For example, immigration has been an issue that has affected many voters, so the nominees may appeal to immigration supporters or opponents on that issue. It is also important for the nation to learn about the nominees and their ideas for national issues and how they compare to their other nominees. In order to hear all candidates, they engage in public debates where all presidential candidates speak about their solutions to issues that the nation is facing. In the general election that occurs every 4 years in November, citizens engage in their civil right to vote and choose a president that will guide the nation for the next 4 years. Following the general election, electors from the Electoral College cast their state votes in the Electoral College. The Electoral College has electors that were already established by the United States Constitution to elect the President and Vice President of the United States. Arizona currently has 11 electoral votes. Each state has a different number of electors. A presidential candidate needs to accumulate 270 votes in order to win the presidency. At this time, we are going to move on to practice 4, located on page 459. Based on the passage read, answer questions 1 and 3. When you are ready to start, click play. Let's answer question 1. Which of the following is necessary for a candidate to win the presidency? A. Earning a majority of primary wins. B. Receiving a majority of the popular vote. C. Receiving a majority in the Electoral College. D. Having no third-party opponent. So we talked about the Electoral College and how each state has different electors, and they each have a different number of electors. In order for the president to win the nomination for presidency, they need to accumulate 270 electoral votes from the Electoral College. So therefore, the answer is C, receiving a majority in the Electoral College. Let's move on to question 3. Which of the following is an example of a primary election? A. A Democrat and a Republican oppose one another in the race for the U.S. Senate. B. A Republican and an independent candidate oppose one another in a race for the state Senate. C. Once presidential candidates are chosen, they select their running mates. D. 2 city council members are on a ballot to determine which one will run for mayor as a Democrat. Based on what we know with the primary election is that there are 2 candidates from the same party who are competing against each other to receive the party's nomination. Now that we know that, it seems that D is the correct answer. D talks about 2 city council members that are on a ballot to determine which one will run for mayor as a Democrat. At this time, pause the video, complete practice questions 2, 4, and 5, and click play when you are ready to continue. Welcome back to Lesson 5, the role of the citizen. In this lesson, we are going to learn about the role of the citizen. So what does it really mean to be a citizen? So let's start off by defining what citizenship means. Citizenship is a special relationship between a person and a nation. So why is it special? Well, because as a citizen of a nation, you are owed certain rights and guarantees. For the purpose of this lesson, and being that we live in the United States, let's talk about being a citizen in this nation. There are a couple paths to become a citizen of the United States. The first one is to be born here. No matter what the circumstances, if you are born in the United States, you automatically become a U.S. citizen. Second way that you can become a citizen is that regardless of your birthplace, meaning that if you were born in Africa, in Mexico, in Europe, it doesn't matter. As long as one of your parents is a U.S. citizen, then you are also a United States citizen. The last way that you can become a United States citizen is through a process called naturalization. And this is a legal process where immigrants from other countries can become U.S. citizens. As the United States citizens, we have rights that are appointed to us by the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. One of the most fundamental rights is to participate in our nation's political life. We can do this by voting, holding public office such as a mayor, Senate, or House of Representatives, And we can also participate in the nation's political life by electing representatives to govern us. However, we also have obligations and responsibilities to the nation, and that is to uphold the laws, pay taxes, and these taxes are used to pay services the government provides to everyone: military service, volunteering, jury duty, and then along comes with personal responsibilities. So let's focus on jury duty and personal responsibilities. One of the obligations of being a U.S. citizen is jury duty. By participating in jury duty, you are doing your civic duty to bear witness that a fellow citizen is provided a fair and speedy trial. By doing so, you are providing that individual with the fairness that they deserve in the court system. Another way that you could fulfill your role of the citizen is to donate financially to a cause, and this can be any cause that you feel that you are close to or somehow has affected you personally. Another way is volunteering to an organization in your local community. This could be in a food pantry, it could be serving meals during the holidays, including volunteering in political campaigns. Another way that you can fulfill these duties is to recycle, clean up trash, and look out for your neighbors. By doing these responsibilities and obligations, you are fulfilling your role as a citizen in the United States. Now, let's look at practice 5, page 461. At this time, pause the video and based on the passage read, answer questions 1 and 4. When you are ready to continue, press play. We are almost there, so just hold on a couple more minutes. So let's answer question 1. Blank outlines the rights of U.S. citizens. A. The Declaration of Independence. B. The U.S. Constitution. C. A U.S. passport. D. A person's naturalization papers. So we learned early on that the rights of the U.S. citizens are outlined in the U.S. Constitution. So therefore, the answer is B, the U.S. Constitution. Let's answer question 4. The United States must balance the right of society to protect itself against the rights of an accused criminal. One aspect of this tension is the Fourth Amendment guarantee of the right of people to be secure in their person, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Which of the following values is supported by the Fourth Amendment? A. Free speech. B. Privacy. C. Civic duty. D. Volunteerism. So let's look at our options. Free speech pretty much means that you are able or allowed to say whatever is in your mind. So that does not align with the question that's being asked, or it does not align with the Fourth Amendment. Privacy, on the other hand, looks like it might, just because it says that you have the right to secure yourself in your home, your papers, and effects against any unreasonable searches and seizures, meaning that you can keep your privacy private. C, civic duty. Civic duty is what we talked about earlier, being involved in jury duty. And then D, volunteerism. So pretty much volunteerism means volunteering. So this has nothing to do with the Fourth Amendment. By looking at all of our options, I hope that you chose B, privacy, being that B is the correct answer. At this time, pause the video, complete practice questions 2, 3, and 5, and click play when you are ready to continue. Congratulations, you did it! You have survived Chapter 3. We are going to move on to Unit 3, Social Studies, Chapter 4, Economics. I will see you soon.